At least 2 more Palestinians have been shot dead today during sporadic clashes with Israeli soldiers. Yasser Arafat and probably Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak head to Washington this week to see if President Clinton can help them stop the fighting. A few days ago, Arafat told us he cannot stop all his Palestinians from demonstrating, throwing rocks, and even exchanging gunfire with Israeli troops until Israel ends what Arafat labels its occupation of Palestinian territory. We spoke with the embattled president of the Palestinian Authority in his headquarters in Gaza City. Yasser Arafat has changed dramatically from our last meeting 11 years ago. He's 71 now, and his lower lip has a noticeable tremor from an early stage of Parkinson's disease. And he seemed uncharacteristically vulnerable as he asked for international intervention to help stop the bloodshed.
I am begging you to help me to stop this tragedy. I am asking the American people, I am asking the whole international community to save the peace process.
For 5 weeks now, both sides have been locked in a vicious cycle of death. The Palestinians march to bury their dead, and then, enraged by the funerals, they begin to throw rocks, and some fire guns at Israeli soldiers who fire back, killing more Palestinians, which leads to more funerals. What do you hope to gain, Mr. President, from the violence, from the daily deaths of the young people here in the Gaza?
I am killing them. I am killing them. You are asking me to what I am gaining. I am doing it. I am killing them.
Take them off the streets. Then what?
Getting out of the streets. They are facing the siege.
I was on the street today, and I heard what they were talking about. Blood, revenge. Kill the Jews.
Not to forget, they are resisting against this shelling and this bombing and this artilleries and this aeroplanes who are shelling them day by night. They are killing us with your weapons, American weapons. They haven't their own weapons. The helicopters are American helicopters. The tanks are American tanks. The artilleries are American and artilleries. Why you are not advising them to cool it down?
Last Wednesday, the night I talked to President Arafat, was especially bloody. During an intense firefight outside Bethlehem, 7 Palestinians and 3 Israeli soldiers were killed. Arafat blames all the recent violence on Ariel Sharon, Israel's hardline former defense minister, who 5 weeks ago made a point of visiting a key Muslim holy place in Jerusalem, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And Arafat told us he knew that Sharon's visit would trigger violence and that he had tried to head it off.
I had asked Barak and asked the others why Sharon is insisting to come in this delicate time.
And what did Barak tell you?
He kept silent. And I raised this question to President Clinton to try with me to convince Barak not to give him the permission to go to visit.
You knew ahead of time that Sharon was going?
Yes, 3 days.
And you told Bill Clinton?
I told Bill Clinton, I told the European Union, I told the Vatican, I told the Arabs, I told Barak himself, I told, in his house, we were in his house, I told him, please.
Don't let Sharon.
Not Sharon to go there.
And what did he say to you?
He sent Sharon with a big number of soldiers and policemen, and it was the fatal mistake. And next day, everything
fell apart. The day after Sharon's visit, Palestinians began pelting Israeli soldiers with rocks, and the soldiers fired back, killing 4 Palestinians. So a new round of violence had begun. Is it possible, Mr. President, that you fell into Ariel Sharon's trap? You could have ignored Sharon. he would have been unhappy because he likes the attention. But instead, you let the rocks fly, the bodies began to drop, the peace talks and the concessions that were offered are gone, and what's going to happen is that Sharon may wind up playing a larger role in the Israeli government, or you may have put Bibi Netanyahu in place to be the next prime minister of Israel.
Me?
Yes, you.
Yes,
Instead of answering the question, he changed the subject.
I moved my tanks and helicopters and the rockets.
No.
They are sending their tanks, their artilleries, their heavy weapons, their army.
Now, you sound as though they are declaring war on you, and which is not true.
I am asking for quick international forces
Quick international forces to do what?
to protect us, to stop the massacres against our people.
To prevent a war, President Clinton tried to forge a peace agreement last July at Camp David. When that failed, Mr. Clinton placed most of the blame on Arafat for not accepting Israel's concessions. It seemed to us, in what was reported, that all kinds of concessions were made by Ehud Barak.
How? Give me one concession had been given by him.
More than 90% of the West Bank for a Palestinian state, instead of the 40% you now control. The elimination of some Israeli settlements and Palestinian sovereignty over Muslim and Christian sections of the old city of Jerusalem.
I am sorry to tell you, this is not accurate.
This is not accurate.
Completely.
Arafat pulled out his Camp David notebook, and though there's no official version of what was discussed at Camp David, he told us that Israel had insisted on maintaining ultimate control of Muslim holy places in Jerusalem, including the Haram al-Sharif, or Temple Mount, as well as Muslim and Christian sections of the city, which he told us he could never accept.
The sovereignty will be for Israel. Who can accept this all over the world, Muslims or Christians? I told President Clinton clearly and obviously, and also to Barak, do you want me to betray the Christians and Muslims?
And what did President Clinton say to you?
He didn't reply.
He did not reply.
Yes.
I'm told that you said to President Clinton, if I accept what Barak has offered, I will go and have coffee with Yitzhak Rabin in heaven.
I told him, if I will betray, no doubt one will come to kill me. I had mentioned it.
And Arafat told us that even though President Clinton wanted him to accept Barak's proposals at Camp David, nonetheless, Mr. Clinton remains popular among Palestinians. You have confidence in him?
No doubts. I respect him from my heart because he had worked hard and he is still working for the peace process.
And Arafat will ask Mr. Clinton this week in Washington to pressure the Israelis to resume the peace process. So far, in the past 5 weeks, at least 15 Israelis have been killed and reportedly more than 140 Palestinians. But Arafat puts the Palestinian death toll much higher.
More than 220 had been killed. More than 8,000 had been injured.
And that's as many deaths in a month as the Palestinians suffered in a year during the first Intifada.
They will continue to...
I reminded Arafat of what he had said to me 11 years ago during that first Intifada.
We are fed up of this bloodshed. We are looking to have peace for our children and also for their children. Otherwise, we have to blame ourselves, and they have to blame themselves. And the next generations will not respect us. This is a historical chance. If we lose it, we are criminals.
You told me that in Tunis
Yes, and I am
in 1989.
I am still repeating these slogans.
But 11 years later, the rocks have been flying again. The bodies have been dropping again and again. Arafat is insisting that he wants peace.
The United States will develop with the Israelis and Palestinians.
He told us he wants what he and Prime Minister Barak agreed to with President Clinton almost 3 weeks ago at Sharm el-Sheikh. That the Israelis pull their troops back from the outskirts of Palestinian towns and that the Palestinians stop their violent demonstrations.
I am not asking for the moon. I am asking the honest and the accurate implementation to what had been agreed upon.
But instead of peace after the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, the violence and the rhetoric intensified on both sides. So Barak called a timeout from the peace process, and here's how Arafat responded.
Let him go to hell.
And what do you accomplish if you talk that you want to go back to the peace process and you tell the Prime Minister of Israel to go to hell?
And he is what he's saying against me. I'm a dangerous man, not only against Israel, but against the Jews all over the world.
You know what it sounds like? Two schoolboys hurling rocks at each other. So the schoolboys finally called in the principal last Wednesday night, elder statesman Shimon Peres, who won the Nobel Peace Prize with Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin back in 1994. And after Peres met with Arafat, both sides agreed finally to back off, to try to live up to the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, to try to stop the vicious circle of death. But as is always the case here, that's easier said than done, especially since extremists on both sides seem beyond government control. Example, after the Peres-Arafat deal, Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for this car bomb that killed 2 Israelis in Jerusalem. But still, Arafat remains hopeful. Do you think that you are going to live to see a peaceful Palestinian state next to Israel?
This is what I am hoping. And to live together beside the Israelis.
To live together beside the Israelis.
Yes, in peaceful agreements.